if either something got in your way or you're just a big procrastinator and you've got a very limited amount of time to put those applications together, here is how you can use ApplicantLab in the shortcuttiest way possible. You are going to first go to the to-do list module, open up Set Your Strategy, and then look at the Career Vision checklist and the Why MBA checklist. At the bottom of the Why MBA checklist in particular, there's a video called the Sanity Check video. That might be worth watching. Next, go to brainstorming. It's right over here. Once you're inside of brainstorming, I want you to brainstorm at least 3 leadership stories and 1 failure story for each recommendation that you need. All right, the next step is the branding step. So after you've brainstormed your stories, if you've got, say, 5 or more leadership stories, you might want to spend a few minutes in the branding module. Since you're in a hurry, just focus on assigning those top 3 leadership traits. Okay, by this point, you've probably already entered in the schools that you're applying to, but if not, just enter in your schools. If the school or the program that you're applying to is not explicitly supported by the lab, please do not panic or worry. Click this little button here and need general advice or haven't decided yet. That will add a quote-unquote school to your account that covers the most common graduate business school essay questions that are asked. So it pains me to say this, but I'm going to have you now skip essay advice and mapping, just like I'm having you skip Career Vision and Why MBA. It pains me to ask you to do that too, but if you're in a hurry, then what we're going to do is we're going to go to pre-writing. So here's what a typical pre-writing screen looks like. All your schools are here across the top, so you will pick the school you want to work on, and then the different essays will appear here. You will click on these little arrows to either expand or contract them. As you expand it, if you did map evidence, you probably didn't map evidence because I told you not to do that because you're in a hurry, but if you did map any evidence, it'll appear here. What you're going to do is you're going to read in the pre-writing module. I take every essay question and I break it down into lots of mini questions. These little mini questions are smaller and friendlier, and so my hope is that by getting you going with some of the smaller questions, I can at least get you out of a rut. The other benefit of the mini questions is that they make sure that you don't miss anything important, and oftentimes I will also put in the mini questions stuff to not do. So make sure that you are not doing X and Y and Z. And so right here next to the mini questions is a little text box where you can jot in the notes. And here, this blue button that says Review Advice, if you click on this, it will expand out the advice that you skipped in the essay advice section. I put it here so that way you don't have to click back and forth between the sections. So what you're going to do after you've jotted your notes, these can just be bullets in pre-writing, right? Go back to the to-do list, and you're going to click on any of the schools that appear here, and then look at the rough draft checklist and the final draft checklist. Okay, then in the recommendation section, click on Purpose of Rec ? On the side. That's going to pull up the advice of my do's and do not do's for the recommendation. If you read those and you suddenly realize, oh no, I asked my recommender to talk about how I can do differential equations in my head, and now I realize after reading Maria's advice that that's a terrible thing for them to talk about, at least you have some time to course correct. You might be able to reach out to your recommender and say, hey, you know that thing that I asked you to write about, like, oh, could you maybe pick something else? Then I want you to do the resume module. You might want to start by looking at the Good Resume template. If you download it and delete the endnotes, because what I do is basically an annotated document where I explain not just what I'm doing, but why I'm doing it. And then final walkthrough here, this is again a checklist for you to go through with your own resume, or you can send your resume document to, say, a friend or a colleague or a mentor, and then send them the list and say, okay, is my resume doing all of these things? One thing that a lot of people do not realize is that the resume is in fact more important than the essays. So that is why if you've got 1 extra hour to spend, I would rather have you spend that hour on the resume. Okay. And then finally, the application forms module. Do not wait until the day of the deadline to get started on them. If you haven't already taken a little peek, you might be very surprised at just how much stuff they ask for. So go through the application forms on your own first, and then if you encounter anything that you're like, oh, I don't know, how do I describe my responsibilities? What's the best way to talk about my challenges at each job? Whatever, I got you covered in here. Whew, so obviously there are a ton more exercises and a ton more advice inside of the lab. For the people out there who are spending a year or more, great, I've got those people covered, but I've got you covered too. What I've just gone through in this video, these are the major guardrails, avoiding the biggest mistakes, and you will hopefully be hitting at least some of the best advice in order to make significant progress. You might have procrastinated or had obstacles get in your way up until now, but the good news is now you can power through and get through most of these modules on your own with some dedicated focus. So go, go, go. You can do it.